At 71, Terry Curran isn't interested in protecting anyone anymore. Not the managers who turned on him, not the clubs that let him go, not even the decisions that still follow him. Because some careers don't fade. They stay unfinished. He had the talent, no one ever questioned that. A winger who could change a game in seconds. Unpredictable. Fearless. Impossible to read. But that was only half the story. Because everywhere he went, something followed him. A disagreement, a fallout, a moment that changed everything. And those moments didn't disappear. They stayed, built up, until they became something heavier than memory. Not just moments, names. Names tied to chances lost, to doors that closed too early, to decisions that never sat right. And now, he's not looking back with nostalgia. He's looking back with clarity. Because when a career turns the way his did, you don't forget the people who were there when it changed. You remember exactly who they were and what they cost you. Subscribe if you want the truth behind careers like this, not just the headlines. Because Terry Curran is finally done holding back. Terry Curran was direct, fast and fearless. A winger who attacked without hesitation. He could beat players, create chances, change games. That part was never in doubt. But he didn't always follow instructions. He trusted his instincts more than the system. And that's where the problem started. Managers saw the ability. They also saw the risk. One of them put it plainly. He's got everything, except the discipline you can rely on. Because talent gets you picked. Trust keeps you in the team. With Curran, that trust never fully settled. Even where it worked best, Sheffield Wednesday. Tension was there. A contract dispute. A breakdown behind the scenes. With Jack Charlton. It didn't need to explode publicly. It was enough. Enough to push a decision that made no football sense. A move across the city. To Sheffield United. He said it later without excuses. It was the craziest decision I made. And more directly, I did it to piss Jack off. That tells you everything. Not just talent, but decisions driven by emotion. And once that happens, it doesn't stay in one moment. It follows you. From club to club, waiting for the next break. Nottingham Forest was meant to be a step up. For Terry Curran, the ability wasn't in question. Inside the club, though, things turned. A disagreement with Peter Taylor, the man who set standards day to day. Not public, but decisive. Once that line was crossed, it didn't reset. Curran lost favour. As it's often put inside dressing rooms, when the staff lose trust, you're already on your way out. He handed in a transfer request. It was accepted. No attempt to pull him back in. No second phase. Just a clean exit. And then Forest moved on. Stronger. More settled. Building toward what they would become. Curran wasn't there. That's the part that lingers. Years later, he would admit in interviews that walking away from big situations was a pattern. Sometimes I made decisions too quickly. You think you're right in the moment. Then you look back. That moment at Forest sits right there. One disagreement. One break in trust, a different path. Of Southampton should have worked. For Terry Curran, it was another chance to settle, to show the talent without the noise. But it didn't last. Under Lawrie McMenemy, the problem surfaced quickly. One moment said everything. Elland Road, a heavy defeat. Curran tried something extra, showboating when the game was already gone. McMenemy saw it differently. In his diary, he wrote it plainly. His attitude annoyed me. I made up my mind he would be away by Christmas. That was it. Not a warning. A decision. And once that decision was made, there was no way back. Years later, Curran didn't soften it. He said it directly. He managed through fear. That wasn't for me. And more than that, he wasn't my cup of tea. No diplomacy. No rewrite. Just the truth as he saw it. The relationship didn't heal with time either. When they crossed paths again later, it didn't settle. It ended badly again. That's what makes this one different. Not just a clash. Not just a manager and a player who didn't get on, but something that stayed. A judgment that didn't change. A name that didn't fade. By 1980, the tension around Terry Curran wasn't just internal, it spilled onto the pitch. Oldham Athletic, September 1980. A running battle with Simon Stainrod. Not a single moment. A series of clashes that kept building. Then it snapped. Curran reacted. The referee acted. Sent off. What followed was bigger than the tackle. Crowd anger, disorder, consequences that reached beyond the match. As it's often said about that day, he lost his head and everything escalated from there. Hillsborough paid for it. Sections closed. Sanctions followed. And Curran's reputation took another hit. Not for what he could do with the ball, but for what could happen around him. That's the shift. From talented to unpredictable. From difficult to a problem managers had to manage. Because once incidents like that stick, they travel with you from ground to ground, from dressing room to dressing room. And every time something goes wrong, it points back, not to the moment, to the name. For Terry Curran, this is where it finally worked. Sheffield Wednesday, no doubts, no questions, just performance. 1979-80 season, 24 goals, from a winger, consistent, direct, decisive. As one supporter would later say, he didn't just play wide, he drove everything forward. But one moment defined it more than the rest. December 26th, 1979, the Steel City Derby. Wednesday against United. Pressure, noise, expectation. This wasn't just another match. And when it mattered, Curran delivered. A goal in a 4-0 win, clear, clinical, no hesitation. As it's been remembered ever since, that day he didn't just score, he stamped himself into it. That result wasn't just a victory, it shifted everything. Wednesday went up that season, and Curran was central to it. Not on the edge, not a problem to manage. The player everything ran through. That's what makes this part stand out. Because here, the talent matched the moment. The fans saw it. The club felt it. He even recorded a song with them. Singing the Blues. That tells you how deep it went. Not just a player, a figure, a connection. And for once, everything made sense, but with Curran, it never stayed that way. And the next move is the one he never truly got past. After everything at Sheffield Wednesday, the goals, the promotion, the connection, Terry Curran made the move across the city to Sheffield United. Not just another transfer, a line crossed. For the fans, it felt like betrayal. For Curran, it became something else over time. Regret. He said it himself years later. It was the craziest decision I made. And more than that, it wasn't the right thing to do. No excuses. No rewriting it. Just a clear admission. Because this wasn't about form, or selection, or a manager's call. This was his decision. And it didn't work. The connection he had built, gone. The position he held, lost. As one supporter would later put it, he had everything here, and then it just disappeared. That's what makes this different from the other moments. This one didn't come from a clash. It came from him. And that's harder to carry. Because you can argue with a manager, you can fall out with a club, but you can't argue with your own choices. They stay. And this one did. Long after the move, long after the games, a decision that never really settled. A moment he didn't let go. At Everton, Terry Curran reached the level he had been chasing. Top division, strong squad, a club moving in the right direction. But this time, it wasn't a manager, it wasn't a decision, it was his body. Injury. He said it plainly. I was out for 6 months, came back too early and broke down again. That's the part that changes everything. Not one setback, two. And in football that's enough. Because while he was out, the team didn't stop. They moved forward, and someone else stepped in. Trevor Stephen took the place, took the moment, and didn't give it back. As Curran later reflected, you come back, and it's gone. And then came the hardest part, watching. Everton pushed on, winning, building, becoming something bigger. He was there, but not in it. Not fully. 9 league appearances in a title-winning season. Close enough to touch it, but not close enough to be part of it. That's the difference. Not losing your talent, losing your moment. Because football doesn't wait. Not for injury. Not for recovery. Not for anyone. And for Curran, that moment never came back the same way again. When it ended, it didn't end clean. For Terry Curran, there was no final moment to hold on to. No perfect goodbye. No last chapter that made sense. Just another move. Panionios in Greece. And even that didn't hold. He said it himself. It ended my career. And worse, I didn't get paid out there. That's how it finished, not with control, not with closure. Just another break. By then the pattern was already written. 16 clubs. Moments where everything worked. And then suddenly it didn't. Clashes, decisions, injuries, timing. Each one taking something. Until the career didn't collapse. It just never fully came together. That's the difference. He didn't lose his talent. He lost the direction of it. Because at his best he could change games. At his worst, he couldn't stay in one place long enough to build something lasting. And that's what stayed with him. And not just the matches, but the moments where it could have gone differently. The decisions that never sat right. The names connected to them. Because some careers aren't defined by what they won, but by what never settled. And at 71, he doesn't hide from that. He sees it clearly. What he had, what slipped. And what never came back the same way again. He wasn't a failure. He was something harder to explain. A player with enough talent to belong. But a career that never stayed together long enough to prove it. And that's why it still lingers. Not because of what he lost, but because of what it could have been.